Paul McCartney's new album, The Boys of Dungeon Lane, is lyrically and musically very retrospective. It looks back on his life and it sounds like that. There's lots of tricks and techniques going on during this album that are evocative of old Beatles songs because they are the same thing that Paul did back in those Beatles songs. So today we're going to look at 4 tracks from this album and look at how precisely they use similar ideas that were used in previous Beatles tracks. And this Beatlesque approach to songwriting is there from the very start of this album. Just like a particular album of the Beatles, this album also begins with a very distinctive and hard to label chord. This weird chord was precisely how the song began. Paul said in an interview about this album, "Sometimes I like to just try and find a really crazy chord that I don't even know what it is and just, whoa, maybe that will inspire me."
And I'd never played this chord before. I still actually don't know what it's called. And then just changed that one note. And then, so it's like a 3-chord sequence, you know. So we were off.
Now, over these chords, rather than a typical McCartney melody, we actually get something quite unusual. We get some spoken word.
I used to walk past your house every night. I'd look up at your window.
And then this is followed by a more conventional melodic passage where, interestingly, the chords have sort of been smoothed over, had their jagged edges taken off. The D7 flat 9 13 chord has become a C over D chord, and the A diminished over D has become an A minor over D.
Although we only met one time, I can't forget the feeling.
Now, something that Paul McCartney has done a lot over his career is write what you might call episodic songs. Songs made up of separate little vignettes that are then sort of stapled together. Think of Band on the Run, Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey, the Abbey Road medley from the B-side of Abbey Road, or even A Day in the Life. Well, this song, As You Lie There, is another great example of that, because we've opened with this sort of dreamy section with these weird chords, and then for the next section, we kick into a different key with different instrumentation and a completely different feel. Everything has basically now changed. We're now in the key of C minor, or C Dorian to be more precise, rather than the song's opening key of G major. So the shift from the verse in G major to the chorus in C minor, or C Dorian, was really abrupt, and that kind of maximised the impact. But for the shift back from this chorus in C minor to the next verse that's in G major, Paul transitions us using a Hendrix chord.
I used to walk.
The chord in question is a dominant 7 chord with a sharp 9, and it's become associated with Hendrix due to his use of it. But it was used before Hendrix, in fact by Paul. Paul used it in Michelle in 1965. Paul's used this chord on various occasions. Another notable use is in Maybe I'm Amazed. We then get the third unrelated episode in this song, which is a guitar solo in the key of E. So we've had a verse in the key of G, a chorus section or whatever you want to call it in the key of C minor, and now a guitar solo in the key of E, really lending to that episodic vignette style approach to structuring songs. Now let's move on to another track on this album, Come Inside, which also does something very Beatlesque, a change to the parallel major key.
You can be my mind if you wanted to.
This song opens in the key of E minor with this sort of blues vamp riff. We then go into the chorus where we get the chords C, A minor, E minor, and on the second rotation we get C, A minor, D major, B major, really pinning us down into that key of E minor. So we then get a second verse, a second chorus, and then we go into a new section, which I would describe as a middle 8, but it only has 6 bars, so a middle 6, where we get the chords C sharp minor and E major.
Open up your mind. Open up your heart.
C sharp minor and E major aren't from the key of E minor that we were in previously, then the key of E major. So we've shifted to the parallel major key. We've gone from the key of E minor to the key of E major. And this is something that the Beatles did on various occasions. For example, in the songs Things We Saw on the Hill.
And he never gives an answer, but the fool on the hill. See,
Penny Lane.
there's a banker with a motor car. The little children have an end behind his back. And the banker never wears a mask.
So this song is mixing the parallel minor and major together, mixing E minor and E major together in a sound that is very typical of the blues. The blues is sort of all about mixing the minor and major together. And Paul knows this. When talking about this track, he said, "This is kind of in a minor key, a bluesy key, but it resolves at the end with a major chord. That in classical music is called tierce de Picardy." Now this tierce de Picardy thing that Paul was talking about is at the very end of the song, where despite being in the key of E minor, we resolve to the chord E major. We resolve to the major version of the tonic chord, giving it this bright, sort of successful sounding ending. If Come Inside had instead ended on E minor rather than E major, it would have sounded like this. Perfectly fine, but far darker. It no longer has that bright, conclusive sound. As Paul describes in that quote, a tierce de Picardy, or also known as a Picardy third, is an idea from classical music where you end a passage of music that's in the minor key with the major tonic chord to give it that brighter, more satisfying, conclusive ending. Now, despite being from classical music, we can find the tierce de Picardy in various Beatles songs. For example, by the end of And I Love Her, we're in the key of D minor, but we resolve to D major, a tierce de Picardy. Now let's move on to track 11 on this album, Life Can Be Hard.
Life can be hard, but then that's when we start.
The opening section of Life Can Be Hard uses what we could describe as a circle of fifths chord progression, a chord progression that travels in the interval of fifths. E minor is a fifth away from A minor, is a fifth away from D7, is a fifth away from G, then B7 is a fifth away from E7, is a fifth away from A minor, is a fifth away from D. Now, circle of fifth chord progressions have that very satisfying sound where the chords just kind of feel like they belong together. And that's because the perfect fifth is the most consonant relationship you can have between two chords. And Paul used circle of fifth chord progressions back when he was in the Beatles. For example, here in Golden Slumbers.
Once there was a way to get back homeward. Once there was a way to get back.
And we can see a textbook example of a circle of fifths chord progression in You Never Give Me Your Money.
Never give me your money. You only give me your funny paper. And in the middle of negotiations, you break down.
The chorus of this song, we get yet another parallel key change. In the previous song, Come Inside, we went from the key of E minor to the key of E major. That change that I said was very Beatlesque. It was used in Fall on the Hill, it was used in Penny Lane, and it's used again here in Life Can Be Hard. This time we're going from the key of G major in the verse to the key of G minor for the chorus.
Beauty. She loves me, even when life presses.
Another typically Beatle thing that happens here as well is you'll notice there's this bar of 2/4. This section is largely in the time signature of 4/4 with 4 beats in every bar, but then this is like a half bar, a half measure of just 2 beats.
Even when life presses harder, that's when we don't need to.
This is something Paul's done in various songs, for example, Hello Goodbye, Martha My Dear, Mother Nature's Son, and also in the aforementioned Golden Slumbers. Then at the end of this chorus, we get something that's very evocative of another old Beatles song, this move to triplets.
There's no food in the larder. I know that she wouldn't care.
As you may have noticed, this is very similar to what happens at the end of the B section of We Can Work It Out, where, although we're in 4/4 time, we then switch to triplets, giving it this sort of temporary sense of a waltz of 3/4 time.
Well, fussing and fighting, my friend.
This triplet rhythm then follows us into the next section, the bridge, and now the triplet rhythm is in the vocal melody itself.
Maybe the starlight that shines in her eyes sings to the moon in
Underneath this vocal melody, we get a really interesting chord progression of G minor 7 moving to A flat, the flat 2 chord, a chord that's not really in the key of G minor and instead in the key of G Phrygian, Phrygian being a more exotic scale, a more exotic mode. This section then ends with a sustained D augmented chord. A D augmented chord is basically a D major chord, but the 5th degree has gone up 1 semitone, giving it that suspense sound, that sort of tension that needs to be resolved.
she sprinkles love everywhere.
This is yet another Beatleism. Using augmented chords as the sort of tense 5 chord that needs to be resolved can be found in various Beatles songs like From Me to You, She Loves You, and I think most notably in Oh Darling, where the song itself begins with one big augmented chord.
Oh, darling.
And the last song we'll look at today from this album is Salesman Saint, a song that Paul has written about his parents.
Father was a salesman. My mother was a saint.
Now, interestingly, this song is very evocative of a song written by John Lennon, but not a Beatles song, a John Lennon solo song called Working Class Hero.
A working class hero is something to be.
Father was a salesman. My mother was...
I really wouldn't be surprised if Paul was inspired by Working Class Hero when he first wrote this song. He's ultimately writing a song about his parents who he is describing here as being working class heroes. So it makes sense that he would take inspiration from John's song about the same thing. And we can see that in the very similar use of chords in the same key of A minor on acoustic guitar and using the same 6/8 time signature. So that's the first section of Salesman Saint, but the next section is very different, a big contrast, once again giving us that sort of episodic structure where the song's made up of various different little vignettes. Here we're suddenly hit by this chugging electric guitar. We're now in the key of G major rather than the verses key of A minor, and we're getting a Lydian sound coming through thanks to the flat 5 or sharp 4 of the G chord here. Lydian is basically the same as the major key, but the 4th degree is sharp, and that gives this music this very bright, grand, almost sort of uncanny sound. Then we get something very interesting happen. We get a metric modulation. We change from the time signature of 6/8 to 4/4, but the clever bit, the metric modulation, is that we don't just jump from one to the other. They're mathematically connected. They have something in common, which basically gives us this sort of modulating effect.
So they learn to carry on.
Now, just like so many of the other techniques we've talked about in this video so far, metric modulation is also something we can find in old Beatles songs. For example, here in Happiness is a Warm Gun, we modulate from this combo of 9/8 and 10/8 into 4/4 time.
Jump the gun. Happiness is a warm.
So this song effectively has the structure of A, B, A, so now we're back in that initial A section, and in this incarnation of the A section we get some really nice touches. For example, these moments where these big band style horns come in, this sort of Glenn Miller reference.
Another generation.
As Paul explains in this interview clip, these horns are a bit of word painting, illustrating the type of music that his parents would have been listening to back in the 1940s.
That song you're talking about by my mum and dad, Salesman Saint, in it we have the sound of an old 40s band. This is what they would have listened to.
Learning how to keep it together. Raise a family.
And another nice touch we get in this last section is a polyrhythm.
Carry on.
Here, the bars of music are simultaneously divided into 6 beats and 4 beats, although with the division of 4 beats in the bar, we're only hearing the 2nd and 4th beats out of that potential set of 4, adding an extra level of complexity to this polyrhythm. And before you tell me, oh, Paul McCartney didn't actively think about putting a polyrhythm in this song, he doesn't know anything about music theory, well, here in an interview about this track, he says, having both time signatures happen at the same time is a really funky thing. You hear a lot of African music does this, and I've always been fascinated. And this 3/2 polyrhythm or 6/4 polyrhythm is once again an idea we can see in an earlier Beatles track, Norwegian Wood, which although predominantly written by John Lennon, the middle eight was written with help from Paul McCartney, and it's in that middle eight that we find a basically identical use of a 3/2 polyrhythm. Salesman Saint is one of the most detailed songs on this album, and in fact there's a detail I skipped over at the beginning, the trumpet line that opens this song. That trumpet line isn't just there as a nice little bit of melody, it's there for the same reason that Glenn Miller inspired big band was in this song. As my friend and fellow YouTuber Elliot Roberts will explain, this trumpet part is there as yet another little reference to Paul McCartney's past.
Hey David, thanks for having me on to talk about Salesman Saint. So this is a song that explores what life was like for Paul McCartney's parents right around the time he was about to be born during World War II. A time when his father, who usually worked as a cotton salesman, volunteered as a firefighter, putting out fires from drop bombs, and his mother nursed whoever needed mending thanks to her job as a midwife. It opens with a strummed acoustic guitar followed by the mournful sound of a trumpet. Now the trumpet was the first instrument Paul ever owned when his father, Jim, gifted one to him for his 14th birthday. After learning a few simple tunes, Paul decided he wanted to trade in the trumpet for a guitar so that he could also sing while playing. But the trumpet, forever linked to his dad, remained a special instrument close to Paul's heart. And hearing both instruments in the song's intro, along with the eventual wartime drums, acts like a loving nod both to the era of Paul's parents and his earliest musical influences.
If you enjoy hearing Elliot talk about Dungeon Lane, well, he's just done an entire video about the album. Go check it out, I've linked it down below. And let me know in the comments what your favourite song on this album is.